Hey there, my zombie hunting, mansion exploring thrill seekers. Today we're diving into the eerie halls of a game that transformed scaredy cats into full-fledged survival horror experts. Imagine you're wandering through a spooky, abandoned mansion where every creak could be a hungry zombie ready to pop out. Welcome to the world of the original Resident Evil, where your bravery is just as important as your gaming skills. And stick around because later I'll reveal a jaw-dropping secret about the game that even the most die-hard fans might not know. So grab your flashlights and let's illuminate the dark corners of this groundbreaking title by going back to the early 1990s. Video gaming was about to get a chilling blast of fresh air with the development of Resident Evil. Originally conceived as a remake of Capcom's earlier horror title, Sweet Home, the visionary behind this transformation was Shinji Mikami, a developer determined to blend cinematic storytelling with interactive gameplay to plunge players into a relentless world of survival horror. The how of Resident Evil began as an ambition to exploit the capabilities of the then new PlayStation console, creating environments that were not only visually terrifying but also deeply immersive. Mikami and his team decided to use pre-rendered backgrounds, essentially detailed 2D images over which 3D characters could move. This technique was a game changer, allowing for richly detailed settings that were previously unimaginable on home consoles. The why traces back to Mikami's personal love for horror films, notably George A. Romero's zombie classics, which influenced the game's atmosphere and setting. The decision to set the game in a creepy mansion was both a nod to horror movie tropes and a practical choice, as confined spaces were easier to render and added to the game's claustrophobic feel. Controversy wasn't far behind the game's Western release, though. The original Japanese version featured more graphic content and a different difficulty level, which was altered for the American and European markets. Capcom believed the Western gamers preferred less challenging and slightly less gory games, leading to changes that sparked debate among fans about the integrity of localization practices. As for the developers, besides Mikami, the project saw key contributions from Tokuro Fujiwara, the game's producer, who had worked with Mikami on Sweet Home. Their combined expertise in horror and game design drove the project's ambitious narrative and gameplay integration, setting a high bar for what video games could achieve in storytelling and atmosphere. This in-depth, dedicated approach not only crafted a game, but also spawned a franchise that would define a genre. Resident Evil was more than just a game. It was a pivotal movement in gaming history, pushing the boundaries of narrative and technical design. Now diving into the heart of Resident Evil, the characters and story not only shaped the game's immediate success but also its enduring legacy. Center stage take Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine, members of the elite task force STARS. These characters weren't just avatars for the players, they were fully realized individuals, each with their own backgrounds, strengths, and weaknesses. Chris, known for his brawn, had a lower carrying capacity than Jill, who was not only quicker but could also pick locks, changing how players approach the game depending on their choices of character. This storyline sinks its teeth into you from the moment you step into the ominous Spencer Mansion, located in the fictional Raccoon City, set to investigate the disappearance of their team members. Chris and Jill, along with the rest of the Alpha team, find themselves trapped, navigating through a maze of puzzles, traps, and horrors. The narrative cleverly unfolds through found documents, videotapes, and environmental storytelling, piecing together a tale of unethical scientific experiments and corporate greed. The brilliance of the narrative was how it was interwoven with the gameplay. The mansion itself was a character. Its sprawling layout and the constant backtracking it required created a growing sense of familiarity and dread among players. Each room held potential clues or dangers, and the limited save points and ammo fostered a tense atmosphere of survival under scarcity. The horror wasn't just the jump scares or the grotesque monsters, but in the creeping dread of isolation and the slow realization of the Umbrella Corporation's dark secrets. This narrative depth turned Resident Evil into more than a game. It was a harrowing experience that questioned the ethics of scientific experimentation and corporate power. That's why when you first grab the controller to play Resident Evil, you're not just diving into any ordinary game. You're stepping into a meticulously crafted arena of survival tactics. The gameplay mechanics of Resident Evil are where the rubber meets the road, or should we say, where the zombie meets the shotgun. The game introduced an innovative, yet nerve-wracking inventory system that limited what players could carry. This wasn't just about managing resources, it was about making gut-wrenching decisions under pressure. Will you take more ammo or a healing herb? Because, believe me, you don't want to run into a zombie horde unprepared. Now, speaking of choices, if you're enjoying this deep dive into the mechanics of survival horror, why not make the excellent choice of smashing that like button and subscribing? It's easier than deciding whether to face a zombie with just a knife or a rocket launcher. The control scheme, affectionately known as tank controls, had players pushing up to move forward, down to backtrack, and left and right to rotate. Clunky? A bit, but it added an intentional layer of difficulty to movement, heightening the tension. It's like being at a dance where you're not quite sure of the steps, and every misstep could be your last. But the thing is, Resident Evil's fixed camera angles were a game changer. These static viewpoints could switch unpredictably as players moved from one area to another, creating cinematic movements and sudden shocks. The cameras were placed strategically to obscure what might be lurking just off screen, amplifying the suspense and forcing players to proceed with caution. These gameplay mechanics were not just features, they were integral to the game's oppressive atmosphere. The limitation on movement and visibility made every decision feel significant and every encounter potentially deadly. This helped Resident Evil set a new standard for what it meant to play a survival horror game, whether players are constantly balancing on a knife's edge between strategy and instinct. This careful crafting of gameplay elements ensured that Resident Evil was more than just a series of scare tactics. It was a full-bodied experience that challenged both the player's mind and reflexes. This blend of psychological fear and gameplay innovation is what made the title a beloved cornerstone in the gaming world. This is exactly why Resident Evil didn't just creep into the market, it exploded onto the scene with the force of a well-placed grenade launcher shot.
You ugly.
Upon its release in 1996, it quickly became not just a game but a phenomenon, cementing itself as a critical and commercial success. The game's initial sales were staggering, shipping over 2.75 million copies worldwide at the end of the year. This success wasn't just a flash in the pan, it was the start of a franchise that would go on to sell millions more, spawning sequels, movies, and a myriad of merchandise. The cultural impact of Resident Evil is profound, carving out a niche that would forever change the landscape of horror gaming. It popularized the survival horror genre, mixing puzzle solving with strategic combat and resource management, wrapped in a chilling narrative. This formula became a template for countless successors. The game's influence permeated beyond gaming into pop culture, becoming a reference point for discussion about video games as a form of immersive storytelling. Moreover, Resident Evil brought the horror genre to the forefront of gaming, proving that games could deliver terror just as effectively as a horror film. Its success encouraged developers to explore dark themes and complex narratives, leading to the golden age of horror games. The societal fascination with zombies and apocalyptic scenarios can be partly credited to the fear and intrigue that Resident Evil instilled in its audiences. But if we venture deeper into the cryptic corridors of this game, we'll discover that it is a treasure trove of secrets and subtle nods that could easily slip past even the most observant players. One of the most intriguing secrets involves the game's infamous voice acting. The original dialogue and performances, often criticized for their campiness, were not just the result of limited technology, but also a byproduct of the game's rushed localization process. The actors were given minimal context and direction, leading to performances that, while not Oscar-worthy, added a unique charm and have since become cult classic among fans. Another hidden gem is the character design of Jill Valentine, which was inspired by Sigourney Weaver's iconic role as Ellen Ripley in the Alien series. This influence is evident not only in Jill's resilience and toughness, but also her role as a pioneering female character in video games, breaking the damsel in distress mold. The game also contains a lesser-known Easter egg. The developers included a special key that players can obtain only by completing the game under certain conditions. This key unlocks an alternate costume for characters, a nod to the developers' desire to reward for their skills and perseverance with a bit of lighthearted fun. But perhaps the most jaw-dropping secret lies within the game's code. Hidden within the files is an unused enemy known only as the Tick. Early in development, this creature was intended to be a fearsome foe, but due to memory constraints and balancing issues, it was cut from the final release. The existence of the Tick speaks to the game's ambitious plans for Resident Evil, many of which had to be scaled back due to the technical limitations of the PlayStation. And there you have it, folks, a deep dive into the murky, zombie-infested waters of Resident Evil. We've unearthed the secrets, dodged the undead, and even chuckled at the voice acting that's so bad, it's good. If today's revelations about haunted mansions, hidden ticks, and inspired heroines have taught us anything, it's that every creaking door can lead to a new adventure, or at least a new way to scream at your TV. If you enjoyed creeping through the halls of Resident Evil, click this video here to see more from the Retro Reload. And as always, thank you for watching.